Welcome to the deep dive. We take stacks of information, pull out the key bits, and get you well informed, fast.
Today we're diving right into something super relevant, your mobile phone security. Specifically, we're looking at Android 16. It's a big release, and it promises to, well, fundamentally change how your phone shields you from some pretty sneaky threats.
Yeah.
We've got some great source material here, covers the history, the tech, even new hardware stuff.
Yeah. Our goal today is really to cut through the noise, give you the clearest possible picture of what Android 16 actually means for your privacy, your security. We'll pinpoint the biggest steps forward, and maybe more importantly, what you can actually do now to be safer, even if your phone isn't brand new. So if you've ever been curious about those, invisible threats your phone might be facing, or how the latest tech is trying to help, you're in the right place. Okay, let's get into it. First up, before we even get to Android 16 itself, we need to wrap our heads around the main problem it's trying to solve. These things called Stingray devices. IMSI catchers, cell site simulators, lots of names. What are they exactly, and why are they such a worry?
Okay, so at their core, Stingrays are basically fake cell towers. They're sophisticated surveillance tools designed to mimic legitimate ones. They trick your phone, any nearby phones really, into disconnecting from the real network and connecting to them instead.
Wow, okay. Like something out of a spy flick. How do they actually manage that?
Well, it exploits a really basic thing about how cell phones work. They're always looking for the best signal, the strongest one. A Stingray just blasts out a signal that looks stronger than the real towers nearby, so phones in the area just naturally latch onto it.
And what's really wild, looking at our sources, is how these things have changed. They weren't always accessible like this. Started back in '93, right? Expensive, government-only tech.
Exactly. Used to need massive budgets, military-grade stuff, but now you can cobble one together for like maybe $1,000. It uses readily available software-defined radios, open-source code. It's this democratization of surveillance, as one source puts it, which means it's not just governments anymore. It could be criminals, malicious hackers, a much wider pool of potential attackers.
And they've gotten better at targeting newer networks too, haven't they? Not just old 2G stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The originals mainly hit 2G, but newer versions, things like Hailstorm or Stingray 2, they can work on 3G and even 4G networks. And the really concerning part is how stealthy they are. They operate, quote, without you ever noticing, leave no traces. Your phone connects, it has no idea it's not a real tower. So, your usual security habits, checking app permissions, strong passwords, they don't really help much here.
Right. So once your phone is tricked, once it connects, what's the actual harm? What can they do?
Well, a big goal is grabbing unique identifiers. Things like your phone's IMEI, that's like its serial number, and the IMSI from your SIM card, which identifies you as a subscriber. These are key for tracking specific people or devices. But probably the most common tactic, and maybe the most effective, is forcing your phone down onto older networks, specifically 2G or GSM.
Okay, why 2G? That seems outdated. Aren't we mostly on 4G, 5G now?
We are, but 2G is still around as a fallback, and it's notoriously insecure. Weak encryption, sometimes none at all, and crucially, no proper mutual authentication. The phone doesn't really verify the tower, and vice versa. This makes it easy for an attacker running a fake 2G tower to intercept things like standard text messages, even voice calls, if they're not otherwise encrypted. That lack of security is why Google added a way to disable 2G back in Android 12, and why it's still a focus in Android 16. It's just a persistent weak link. And beyond just listening in or grabbing data, these fake towers can do other things. Force your phone to crank up its transmission power, make it send out excessive signals, launch denial of service attacks, even just jam the frequencies altogether.
Our sources also mention the controversial side, law enforcement use versus criminals. What's the bottom line for the average person there?
Yeah, law enforcement use has definitely been debated. As of 2017, dozens of agencies were known to use them, often kind of secretly. But the key point for you, the user, is that because they're now relatively cheap and accessible, they're definitely in the hands of malicious actors and criminals too. And the big privacy issue is they act like a digital dragnet. They don't just target one person. They scoop up data location, identifiers from every phone in range. So totally innocent people can have their information collected without any reason, any warrant. It's indiscriminate.
Okay, so given how sneaky and frankly powerful these things are, what's Android 16 actually doing about it? How does it fight back against this invisible threat?
Right, so this is the big step. Android 16 introduces what they're calling a network notification feature. It's a major shift.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on you or third-party apps, the operating system itself is actively looking for suspicious network behavior. It's designed to warn you in real time if it thinks you've connected to a fake tower.
Real-time warnings.
Okay.
Okay. What exactly sets off an alert?
It looks for two main red flags. One, if your phone connects to a network that isn't encrypted at all. That's a big warning sign. Two, if the network it's connected to tries to request or record your phone's unique identifiers, that IMEI or IMSI we talked about. If either of those happens, you get a notification. It points you to the safety center in settings for more info. And you even get another notification when you're back on a secure, trusted network.
That sounds incredibly useful. How is it different from those older apps people might have tried, the ones that claim to detect stingrays?
Good question. Those older apps, like IMSI CD or Snoop Snitch, they mostly looked for hints or correlated behaviors. Things like sudden weird signal strength changes or your battery draining super fast, kind of indirect clues. Android 16's feature works deeper down at the OS and modem level. It looks for causal attributes, the explicit actions of a fake tower, like demanding your ID or forcing an unencrypted connection. It's based more directly on network standards and what shouldn't be happening. So it should be much more reliable, fewer false alarms, more accurate warnings. It's a fundamental architectural difference.
Okay, fantastic. So I update to Android 16 and bam, I get this protection immediately. This is the game changer for everyone on Android.
Well, that's where it gets a bit complicated. And this is a really critical point. While Android 16 software enables this, the most advanced features, these specific mobile network security notifications, they depend on hardware. You need a modern modem in your phone, and specifically needs to support version 3.0 of something called the iRadio Hardware Abstraction Layer, or HAL. Think of the HAL as the translator between the Android OS and the phone's actual radio chips.
Okay. HAL 3.0 and a modern modem. What does that mean for most people today?
It means just getting the Android 16 update isn't enough, unfortunately. Most phones currently out there, even high-end ones like the Pixel 9 models expected to get Android 16 soon, they likely won't have this specific HAL version and modem support built in yet, so they won't get these specific cellular security warnings right away, even with the new OS.
Right, that's a really important distinction. So who gets it now and who has to wait?
Primarily, these features are built for devices that launch with Android 16 pre-installed. So we're probably talking about phones coming out later in 2025, like maybe the Pixel 10 lineup. It's going to take time, probably several years, for this capability to filter down through the whole Android ecosystem as people gradually upgrade their phones. Creates a bit of a long tail for this particular security feature.
Okay, so the stingray detection is huge, but hardware dependent for now. But Android 16 isn't just about that, right? What else is happening in the broader security picture?
No, definitely not. And what's interesting is how this new network stuff fits into a much bigger security strategy. Google's Advanced Protection Program, APP, their highest level of security settings, that's getting deeply integrated and beefed up in Android 16. They specifically recommend it for people who might be at higher risk, like journalists, activists, that sort of thing.
And what does turning on advanced protection actually do? Sounds like it locks things down pretty tight.
It really does. It's not just one thing. It's a whole suite of enforced settings.
Yeah.
It turns on theft detection lock, forces Chrome to only use secure HTTPS connections, locks down core features so you can't accidentally disable Google Play Protect or safe browsing. It adds an inactivity reboot if your phone's locked and untouched for 72 hours. It reboots. USB is charging only when locked. It stops auto-reconnecting to sketchy Wi-Fi. And importantly, it disables that vulnerable 2G connectivity we talked about. And they've designed it so enabling a lot of this is just a single tap.
Wow, that is incredibly thorough, covers a lot of ground. What about improvements kind of deeper down under the hood?
Yeah, there are fundamental platform improvements too. Continued work on biometric authentication, making fingerprint and face unlock better. There's the hardware-backed key store, which is crucial. Protects your cryptographic keys and secure hardware, so even if the main OS gets compromised, those keys should remain safe. And, really important for getting updates out quickly, there's Project Mainline.
Project Mainline. Yeah, that rings a bell. That's a thing that helps with Android updates being so fragmented, right?
Exactly. It lets Google update core OS components directly through the Play Store, like updating an app. This massively speeds up security patching, bypasses carrier and manufacturer delays sometimes, and just shrinks the window where vulnerabilities exist. It's huge for overall platform health. Plus, you get improvements to the privacy dashboard, clearer history of what apps accessed, what permissions, and tighter restrictions on what apps can do in the background, especially network and sensor access.
So sounds great for us regular users. Is Android 16 bringing anything new for the business world, for enterprise security?
Yes, definitely. There are significant enterprise-grade additions. Companies can enable advanced protection for their employees' work profiles. There's a new identity check feature. Basically, a company can require you to use biometrics to access work stuff if you're outside a trusted location, like the office Wi-Fi. They're adding corporate badges in Google Wallet for secure NFC building access, things like that. And IT admins get more control with APN overrides, letting them dictate exactly how company phones connect to cellular networks.
Okay, so we have all these great new tools, especially the network security ones. But as you said, not everyone gets the advanced stuff immediately. For those who do or will later, what do we actually need to do to turn them on?
Right. You definitely need to be proactive. The main place to look is in settings, then security and privacy, then safety center, and inside there you'll find mobile network security.
And here's a really crucial point. Our sources stress. Even on phones that can support these features, they're not automatically turned on.
That's exactly right. The main toggle, the one for network notifications, the alert for fake towers or ID requests, that's off by default. You have to go in and flip that switch yourself. Same goes for the 2G network protection toggle, preventing those dangerous downgrade attacks, also typically off by default. So while the big advanced protection program bundles things nicely, these specific, really important Stingray warnings, you need to actively enable them. It definitely highlights a need for user awareness and education.
Okay, so that's critical. Given that the best detection isn't available to everyone yet, and even then you have to manually turn it on, what else should we still be doing? What are the complementary steps?
Yeah, you absolutely need a layered approach. Security isn't just one feature. First, VPN's virtual private networks. A good quality VPN encrypts all your internet traffic, so even if a Stingray intercepts your connection, the data itself is scrambled and useless to them. Second, use end-to-end encrypted messaging apps. Signal, WhatsApp, for texts and calls. Standard SMS is totally unencrypted over the air, remember. Very vulnerable on a fake 2G tower. Third, manage your wireless radios. Turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth if you're not actively using them. They can sometimes be used for location tracking or other exploits too. Fourth, maybe pay attention to weird network behavior, like suddenly dropping to 2G or 3G, constant disconnects, battery draining like crazy. As we said, it's less reliable than the new OS detection, more prone to false alarms, but being aware doesn't hurt. Fifth, kind of related, beware of your physical surroundings. See strange vans parked nearby with odd antennas, especially if your phone starts acting weird. Could be a clue, though obviously that's getting into spy movie territory again. And then there's the extreme option. Faraday bags, they block all signals completely. Not practical for daily life, but they exist for total isolation. It all just underlines that even with Android 16's improvements, real security against threats like Stingrays needs multiple layers. Your behavior, the extra tools you use, they still matter a lot.
Right. So Android 16, huge step forward, clearly, but not perfect, not a silver bullet. What are the main limitations still, and where does this arms race go next?
Well, the biggest immediate limitation is that hardware dependency we keep mentioning. Most phones out there just won't get the best detection features right away. That's number one. And number two, as you said, the fact that crucial notifications are off by default, that puts the burden on the user to know about it and enable it. And beyond that, remember, the attackers don't stand still. Android 16 targets current Stingray methods. But more advanced ones, like Hailstorm, are already designed to try and bypass newer security. It really is, as the sources say, an ongoing arms race. Security is a process, not a destination you just arrive at.
And just briefly, how does this compare to, say, the Apple side of things, iOS?
Well, iOS has traditionally been more locked down in terms of letting apps access low-level network data. That actually makes it harder for third-party detection apps to work effectively on iPhones. Some sources even argue that because of this lack of transparency or user control at that level, effectively no cell phone is protected from Stingray on iOS in the same way Android 16 aims to be. Though Apple does have its lockdown mode for very high-risk scenarios, which offers some protections. Looking ahead, continued progress really needs ongoing investment in this radio-level security, both from OS makers like Google and the phone manufacturers, the OEMs. Android 16 pushing for more transparency and user warnings is a really important foundation. Future steps might involve things like universal protection against null ciphers, maybe even using AI to spot more subtle network anomalies. It's definitely a major milestone, but it's part of a much longer journey. Vigilance, constant updates, adaptation that's key for everyone involved.
What an incredible deep dive. Android 16's move to natively detect these fake mobile networks. It really feels like a landmark shift, turning something invisible into something you can actually be warned about. That transparency is huge.
It really is. And placing it within that wider security framework, the beefed up advanced protection, the core improvements like the key store and Project Mainline,
Hmm.
the enterprise features it shows a really comprehensive strategy.
But as we dug into, the hardware dependency means a staggered rollout for the best bits, and that off by default setting is crucial. You, the user, definitely have a part to play.
Absolutely. It reinforces that cybersecurity is always going to be this cat and mouse game, this arms race. Android 16 definitely raises the bar for smartphone protection, pushing towards a safer future. But it also reminds us that staying vigilant and adapting is just essential for everyone.
So after all that, what really stands out to you? That constant balancing act we all navigate, convenience, privacy, security, all happening right there in the palm of your hand. Definitely something to think about until our next deep dive.